let's take a look at the Tories' performative anti-wokeness. Now, as we're all aware, the Tories have been very hit and miss on cultural issues and certain policy decisions that they've made, with some of the most strident defenders of freedom, shall we say, being left in the backbenches and left to rebel against sweeping Tory policies to try and restrict freedoms, which, of course, thankfully have seemingly been pulled away recently, and hopefully those restrictions won't come back. But on the cultural stuff, they seem to try to present a united front. Certainly they have been recently, but we'll have to take a look at whether they actually stand up by their own words or if it's all a load of performative rubbish. So, Oliver Dowden, the Conservative Party chair, has recently made some speeches at the Heritage Foundation, which has got him in a little bit of hot water with the mainstream lefty press, who haven't particularly liked his condemning of what he was describing as painful woke psychodrama. So let's take a look at what it was that he said in this ITV article. Conservative Party chair Oliver Dowden has said the West should not be obsessing over pronouns or seeking to decolonize mathematics in a speech denouncing painful woke psychodrama.
Good.
Speaking to the influential right-wing think tank, the Heritage Foundation in the US, Mr. Dowden said that woke ideology was a dangerous form of decadence at a time where our attention should be focused on external foes. I think that's a great term to actually use for it there, decadence, because really it is the sign of an immensely decadent society that people here even have to have time to worry about this stuff in the first place. It's a great sign of the material wealth and material comfort that most people live in, especially those who espouse these kinds of woke beliefs in the metropolitan cities, that they have time to be able to read about all of this theory, to be able to complain about all of these things, whereas in other actually impoverished countries, you'd be too worried about where you're getting your next meal from.
Yeah.
Rogue states are seeking to challenge the international order, and at the precise point where our resolve ought to be the strongest, a pernicious new ideology is sweeping our societies.
Based.
It goes by many names. In Britain, its adherents sometimes describe themselves as social justice warriors. I think that eventually became an insult to throw at them, but that's neither here nor there. They claim to be woke, awakened by the so-called truths of our society. But wherever they are found, they pursue a common policy inimical to freedom. So it is nice to see that, well, to be fair, I was going to say that some of the Tories, all of the Tories at least seem to know how to spout these kinds of lines, as we've seen from Sajid Javid trying to say that they're going to eliminate woke ideology and root it out and other such things. But, once again, we'll see whether they actually live up to their promises. Right. It's in our universities, but also in our schools, in government bodies, but also in corporations, in social science faculties, but also in the hard sciences, Mr. Dowden said. But, interesting point there, in government bodies, who's got the big majority in the government at the moment? Perhaps the Tories? Perhaps the Tories should be doing something about this, but never mind. But I tell you, it is a dangerous form of decadence. Just when our attention should be focused on external foes, we seem to have entered into this period of extreme introspection and self-criticism. And it really does threaten to sap our societies of their own self-confidence. Just when we should be showcasing the vitality of our values and the strength of democratic societies, we seem to be willing to abandon those values for the sake of appeasing this new groupthink.
Quite.
Mr. Dowden has said the West has become obsessed by what divides us rather than what unites us, which, all credit to him, is a great point. When there's trouble elsewhere in the world, as there always is, we shouldn't be allowing ourselves to be torn apart internally, as we are recently. We need to be providing a unified front to present what Britain is, what Britain can be, and what we stand for.
And you shouldn't let particular interest groups annex or monopolise that entire discussion.
Yes. And what do you think the left's response to all of this was?
Fascism.
Almost certainly. I would go about doing the typical thing. Yep. I would do the typical thing where we get a load of reactions up from Twitter of random people complaining about how, oh, it's just compassion and decency for other human beings. That's all that wokeness is. That's why we're teaching your children to hate themselves for being white. But no, I thought it would be great to get up LBC's favourite hunchback gremlin, James O'Brien, who I see as generally just the mouthpiece for absolute nonsensical
Yeah.
leftist talking
The high
points.
priest of whataboutery.
Yes, and that's exactly what he does here in this clip, just to sort of give you an idea of what the general idea on general thought process on the left is regarding this.
We cannot be complacent about defending our values against this painful woke psychodrama. It will take courage to resist it. Too many have fallen for the idea it is kind or virtuous to submit to these self-righteous dogmas. It is not. 12 years in power, an 80-seat majority, a barefaced liar in Downing Street, parties being thrown while the rest of us couldn't go to funerals, and Oliver Dowden wants us to be most concerned at this moment in our island history about the painful woke psychodrama. And I don't know what he means. And it's possible
Of course you don't.
that you do. Just help me out. 0345 6060973. Here you go. Here are his examples of what is threatening the West. It is, when you pause for a moment, incredible that Vladimir Putin's troops are massed on the border of Ukraine, and Oliver Dowden, the chairman of the Conservative Party, is arguing that the real threat to the West is obsessing over pronouns or seeking to decolonize mathematics.
What?
I don't often do this as a phone-in question, but every now and then it seems the perfect inquiry. What is he talking about?
What are you
0345 6060973. Conservative Party Chair Oliver Dowden has said the West should not be obsessing over pronouns or seeking to decolonize mathematics in a speech denouncing painful woke psychodrama. What is he talking about? And what are the people he is talking to, because it ain't me, what are they frightened of? Or,
Well,
final question, we'll go for the hat trick. What does he want them to be frightened of? So,
All right, that's the clip there. Yes.
I'm fortunate enough to work in a...
There we go. So, there's some real bad faith argumentation
Just
right
a
there,
bit.
isn't there? Although
Just
I
a
don't think
bit.
we should expect anything else from Mr. O'Brien. He is, of course, accusing the right, the Conservatives, if you can call them the right, of fear-mongering, while fear-mongering himself about the scary situation over in Eastern Europe at the moment. But there is the point that could be made, James, which is obviously you don't want to see what is happening, or at least you don't want to acknowledge it, because when you see this stuff like obsessing over pronouns and decolonising maths,
Yes.
you see it as a good thing, but you
yes.
recognise to a significant portion of the population that they see it as a very bad thing because they recognise that it's going against British values. So you instead try to downplay it by going, what even is it?
If anything, hasn't he made our point for us and saying that yes, we fully agree that obsessing over pronouns and seeking to decolonise mathematics does not matter, but we're not the ones who are starting this. Like, it's quite literally the wokest. You should be telling them, why are you not focusing on the imminent Ukrainian invasion? Like, surely that's
If that's
more
how
important.
you see that
If that's
situation
how
going.
you see that
He's
situation, which is...
He's basically just saying, well, there's people having a spat over here, so why do you care so much that I'm just repeatedly punching you in the face?
There is also the other question of which side is actually, defending the West. What's your conception of the West? If you're talking about the West cultural heritage, that would probably be on the side of Russia rather than, I don't know, the Pentagon, for example.
But, so yeah, that's just a general summation of the left's reaction, because basically every talking point that you could get in there, barring the, it just means that you're a good person, was held within that clip. But let's take a look at what some of the other things that the Tories have been doing, including Nadeem Zahawi actually saying something correct and possibly useful for once, which is that education should not be indoctrination. I know, leftists shook in their
Wow.
boots at the very statement, but the Education Secretary has told schools to root out activist teachers after claims that concerning race theories were being taught in classes and pupils as young as 10.
Good, about time.
Yeah, who were urged to write critical letters about the Prime Minister. Nadeem Zahawi will this week issue guidance for schools to ensure teachers make a balanced presentation of opposing views when discussing political issues with their students. He said it was to ensure that the complexity of many of the important questions is understood. So I have seen, once again, O'Brien and many other leftists saying, well, why wouldn't you want to teach the children the truth, as if the truth is this one-sided, very narrow, flattened interpretation of what went on in history, rather than the truth, the actual truth, truth, which is that life is complex, history is complex, and you can't always paint it in the one way that you like.
And it's in the interests of history to at least consider other historiographies.
And this is obvious nonsense when people say stuff like that, because what they're actually appealing to is their right to paint history in their own ideological light. They want to put across, say, a dialectic presentation of history where they just view it by one way, and it's often politically motivated teachers who are doing this. So obviously this is something that we don't want being pushed on our children. And also, when you refer to the truth, that's kind of relative when it comes to the age that you're at, and whether you want children to know the truth. Do you want, say, 8-year-olds to know the truth about Santa? No, because hopefully, if you're a good person, you should recognise that there is some beauty in the innocence of that children have when they're growing up that should not be disturbed by concepts like broad concepts like the truth in the way that they're using it. So it comes after Mr. Zahawi was forced to investigate a council over reports that concerning race theories were being taught in schools, and staff at a Nottingham primary school who were blasted for allegedly pushing children as young as 10 to penning notes, attacking the PM and calling for him to resign. And once again, right there, what does a 10-year-old know about politics? Obviously, kids are just going to see the teacher telling them what they need to think about politics, seeing an authority figure doing that and going, okay, I will go along with everything there, because that's what kids do. They don't know any better. And I know the left have a certain poor level of when it comes to political discussions, but would it really be that much improved by a bunch of 10-year-olds?
No.
So the left are outsourcing 10-year-olds to do their political activism for them. It says a lot, doesn't it? Today, Mr. Zahawi said, children must be given the opportunity to shape their own views on political issues without being swayed by what others think.
Right.
The Education Secretary said it's part of a democracy for children to shape their own political views as they grow up. But once again, children developing in a healthy way is the exact opposite of what the left wants, so it's no wonder they're so furious at this. The new guidance I will issue clarifies the requirement for teachers to make a balanced presentation of opposing views on political issues, so that the complexity of many of these important questions is understood. It's not for teachers to tell people what they should think on political issues or how they should vote. The next generation is more than capable of making their own decisions. He said it was important for parents and carers to trust schools to be impartial so that children can form their own independent opinions. It means education, not indoctrination, which is, once again, when it comes to the long march of the institutions, the exact opposite of the left's mantra for the past few decades, although that's been the quiet part that they've not been saying out loud up until quite recently. Welbeck Primary's Twitter account shared a picture of the children brandishing documents addressing a local Labour MP who supports the headmistress. Another showed a pupil scowling next to a whiteboard which said lies, mistrust and selfish next to Boris Johnson in an adult's handwriting. And one zoomed in on a letter allegedly written by a Year 6 student using the phrase PMQs and breaking down the UK economy and pandemic response.
Right.
So you're taking economic advice from a 10-year-old. That's what you want. Okay, I mean, yeah, I would believe that the Soviet economy was run by a bunch of 10-year-olds, to be fair. Meanwhile, the head teacher was tweeted a series of left-wing messages and used the phrase Tory scum online because, of course, more than 5,000 people signed a petition slamming the council for allegedly telling primary school children they are racists or victims of their classmates in lessons. Children as young as 7 are being taught that they are not racially innocent because they view white at the top of the hierarchy. So you're traumatizing children for the sake of your ideology. So empathetic, so beautiful, wow. And there's other examples of this that Zahawi is railing against. For instance, we can go to the next article from LBC where there is a story of a woke head teacher forcing children to go vegetarian for climate reasons. Parents have hit out at Barrowford School in Lancashire after they were told all meat had been banned from lunch boxes and the canteen. And there's a question to raise here.
That's child abuse.
Yes, that is child abuse, but if you're on the left, generally speaking, you consider yourself to be... Oh yeah, John's got up this other article from GB News. I'll just mention it. The teachers have been banned from promoting Black Lives Matter to pupils in classrooms, which is a good thing because as much as you can say that it's a neutral cause, Black Lives Matter are themselves a political organisation.
Yes.
You should not be promoting political organisations in schools, obviously. But yes, this teacher. The question I have is, if you're on the left, surely you care, quotation marks, about impoverished people, you care about the underdog. Surely by removing any chance for these kids to eat meat in schools and potentially pushing meat, plant-based meat products or just vegetarian diets, you're probably going to be affecting the poorer students worse.
Yes, pushing them even deeper into the poverty line.
So another contradictory policy advocated by the left, obviously, justifying her reasons. Ms. Tomlinson, Rachel Tomlinson is the head teacher, said, "We made our school lunches meat-free to demonstrate how each of us making a small change to our daily habits can have a much wider positive impact."
A small change.
And that reducing meat consumption is just one way to do this. And once again, it's not that they've just stopped serving meat in the canteen, it's they've banned it from lunch boxes as well. So if your mum prepares you a ham sandwich and you bring that in, that's getting thrown in the bin. Don't have any money to buy any of the delicious and nutritious vegetables that they're offering? Sucks to be you, I suppose. We have been careful to approach this in a balanced way and teach that it is fine to eat meat, but that reducing our consumption can help our planet.
They've literally banned it.
Yes, so you have banned it, and this is not your right to force a particular diet on students. The school has previously faced ridicule after head teacher Tomlinson scrapped all punishments for bad pupils and banned teachers from raising their voices, insisting no child was ever to be considered naughty. Fire this head teacher.
Yes, please.
For the love of God. As with every policy that the left does, it has a superficial veneer of compassion and empathy over the top of it. But the long-term results of this will only be negative for the people that you are supposedly trying to help. Because if you're banning teachers from raising their voices and saying that no child can be considered naughty, guess what? Those badly behaved students are going to run rampant throughout classrooms and destroy the educational and learning opportunities that the other students are there for.
They don't really care about the kids, though, do they?
No, they care about the kids just in a different way. They care about brainwashing the kids, not about actually educating them. But there are other things from schools as well. The Teachers' Union has said to decolonise desks. This comes from last July, saying the 450,000 member union says there is an urgent need to decolonise every subject and stage of the school curriculum, especially since last summer's BLM protests and the COVID-19 pandemic. A new NEU report seen by the Telegraph discusses how specialists could train teachers and schools on whiteness, anti-racism, creating the tools for critical self-reflection and understanding the system. Just teach them maths.
And self-hatred.
Just teach them grammar and maths. That's all you're there for. You are funded by the public. Stop using our money to brainwash our children. But yes, they want to make white privilege and colonialism visible in schools, from curriculum to routines to classroom layout. So just from the way that your desks are laid out, apparently our education system has been shaped by colonialism and neoliberalism.
Right.
Evil.
Bring children up to hate themselves. That's very, very good for their self-esteem, isn't it?
Yes, and it really shows how much they enjoy victimising the white children in particular, presumably if they're telling them that they are colonisers and inherently racist.
Because they're born from the off, being part of the problem.
So overall, this may all seem like a good thing that the Tories are doing this, that they're actually putting forward a strong foot forward in the fight against wokeism that is infiltrating our institutions, already has infiltrated our institutions, and running rampant across our country. But the problem is, if the Tories want to root out wokery, they might want to start with their own party. So we've got many different examples here. Stephen Swinford on Twitter saying that Sajid Javid briefed the Tory MPs this afternoon, back in September, on national insurance rise for health and social care. He said that he'll be watchful for any waste or wokery from the NHS. But it's not clear what the concrete commitments from the NHS are in exchange for the £16 billion of additional funding. And just a reminder as well that this next tweet we can see is that Sajid supports BLM. He did a Rip George Floyd because supporting a communist foreign organisation is exactly what we want to see our Conservative government doing. But as was mentioned, there is no concrete commitment for what that national insurance hike that we're all feeling now is actually going to be going towards. And I think it's probably going to be spent on diversity quotas and bureaucrats, because that's what we all need in our lives.
Excellent.
A little bit more bureaucracy in the NHS. The NHS is hiring an army of 42 new executives on salaries of up to £270,000 each, as Boris faces mounting anger over his tax rise to fund healthcare. More than £9 million will be spent employing dozens of chief executives of new integrated care boards, each of whom earn more than the Prime Minister. On Wednesday, senior Tories said that they were appalled by the decision to hire the new executives, saying workers on low salaries would struggle to understand why they were having to pay more tax to fund mega pay packets for a legion of new managers. And I think it's important to point out that there is seemingly, well, very obviously, a division within the Tory party, and sadly we've got the wrong MPs in charge on the front benches, which is obviously the political incentive structure run amok as far as I'm concerned. People in our democratic society get good optics from going NHS good, and therefore the way to continue to get good optics is to go more NHS equal more good, give more money, throw more money into that bottomless pit, and we're sure to get good results somehow. We may not get good results as far as our medical care goes, but it'll look great for the next election. And there's also the diversity managers, so if Sajid wants to root out wokeness, he can start here. The NHS is on the lookout for the country's finest minds to tackle its biggest post-pandemic problem. It's currently advertising for 12 diversity, inclusion and social equity roles across the country, with salaries reaching up to £108,000.
Set fire to the money. That would be money better spent.
It would certainly be a better use of resources. This is on top of the 8 diversity managers who were hired on £50,000 salaries at the start of this year, and includes managerial positions with responsibilities such as leading and supporting the effective delivery and implementation of our equality, diversity and inclusion approach through multifunctional teams, and playing the fundamental role in the development and lived reality of a truly diverse workforce.
So they're paid £50,000 a year to race bait.
Yes, and I honestly don't understand how you can incorporate diversity, inclusion and equity in healthcare and medical care, because surely you just hire the best people for the job and then treat the people who need treatment. I don't see how race needs to come into this at all, but we can also see a bunch of the we've got Callum's tweet up here pointing out that a bunch of the national agencies and governmental bodies run by the government all put up the pride flag and the racially segregated pride flag as part of the as part of Pride last year, because you know that the best way to show inclusion is to separate out the blacks from the rainbow. That really says it all, doesn't it? We've got another one here. If we go next, to the next link. We are the NHS. All of them flying the racially segregated pride flag. Carl and Callum have pointed out it does look like a kind of pincer manoeuvre where the trans and the blacks and the browns are all teaming up against the LGBT.
I've never seen a symmetrical one before.
It does. It looks like it's being sort of closed in on, doesn't it? It's very strange. But so the NHS must really be struggling if we've got time for all of these sessions that they're talking about on the power of staff networks, and ending with some wonderful wellness activities at 6 p.m. when this was posted. So they must be really struggling if all of those nurses have all of that free time to engage in this sort of stuff. And just to point out as well, the civil service programme, which is a government programme, has a diversity hiring programme where the requirements are you're in your final 2 years at university with a 2.2 or higher in any degree subject, expected or awarded. Fair. Or you meet the diversity requirements, which are ethnic minority, socially or economically disadvantaged, or you have a disability and the right to work in the UK. Probably. Maybe. Unless you're just off the boat. Yeah. So obviously right there, they're equating being an ethnic minority but with being having a disability or social or economic disadvantagement. So that's very interesting. But yeah, I have no real problem with sort of programs like this when it's trying to give opportunities to maybe poor people who wouldn't have these opportunities otherwise. But doing it along racial lines just seems completely unnecessary.
It's absurd because obviously not all white people are rich.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, all you need to do is look at Liverpool, which we're going to talk about next. But
Yes.
so perhaps all of this is due to divisions within the party, which we've definitely seen with the rebellion on the Plan B restrictions vote that went through a few months ago, where we had 100 Tory rebellion vote against them. But if the party truly does want to do anything useful to help preserve our culture and the standards of our institutions that they are the ones in charge of managing currently, they need to present a unified front and get some bite to go along with that bark. So Nadeem and Oliver, hopefully you can stick up for what you're saying.
Yes.
If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content we have on the site, such as this series on World War I Bo has been doing, and the Epoch series with special guest Apostolic Majesty. If you want to find out what else is coming out on the website, you can also follow us on Getter at lotuseaters_com. Thank you and goodbye.